Right, hello everyone. Welcome to the next race guide. This is the Season 7 race guide of Norse, and I'm really looking forward to this one. Norse, just give you a quick preview, are one of the more complicated teams in Blood Bowl with respect to the fact that they've got several player types, and all the different player types, a lot of them have frenzy, and they've even got a couple of unique mechanics, and there's a certain player, a beer pig, which also has its own unique special rule. So, without further ado, let's dive in and have a look at the teams, and I'll introduce the players to you specifically. So, the first one we're going to look at is the different player types. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 players. The first one is the Snow Troll, and this one we're only allowed one of these, and it has Claws and Frenzy as standard. The nega traits are Unchannel Fury and Loner. So when you try and move it, it will only move on a 4+, it will blitz on a 2+, and when it doesn't do anything, it will just stand there and it retain its tackle zones, but it just say no. So it's a bit like a Minotaur in that respect. It also has Disturbing Presence, so if the player is the opponent team is trying to throw the ball around this player, then within 3 squares, they're going to suffer -1 to either pass or catch the ball, as it says so there. That is also active even if the player is knocked over, so it's quite useful with respect to trying to stop a 1-turn or just interfering with a passing play. The Claws is probably the biggest thing on this player. We'll get into that later. Next, we're allowed Ulfwereners. We're allowed two of these babies. These are a little bit like, well, these are probably one of the most core players on the team. They're not the stars of the show, but they're definitely a very important player on the team, and you'd be looking to have both of these probably straight away. Movement 6, Strength 4, that is their core characteristics, but they also start with a Frenzy skill, so they're ace. Strength 4 Frenzy is brilliant. What I've done here, by the way, is I've customized them, so this is the legendary cosmetic that you will see. More on that later. The next one is Norse Berserker. So for those of you familiar with Blood Bowl 2, this is literally a lift and shift, as have the other player types so far of the Old Norse. We've got block, we've got frenzy, we've got jump up, we've got movement 6, strength and agility 3+. They pass terribly now, and they're a little bit weak, and this is where the brittleness of all Norse is going to start to show. They are AV 8+. They've got great skill access, they've got general and strength as primary, and then they can also get into both the passing and agility trees on secondary. I will be talking about the players themselves and how to level them shortly, but just note here that this is really strong skill access here. You'll be making a lot of use of the general and strength trees. Then we've got a new player type. If you played Blood Bowl 2 or you've played the old edition of Blood Bowl, this player didn't exist. A Valkyrie is the player type here. It is basically the old runner and thrower sort of jammed together into one player type. Again, we're allowed 2 of these. They've got pass and catch, so they can pass and catch to each other or anyone else. They also, though, have Dauntless and Strip Ball. So this type of player is your quarterback, but it is also your receiver, so you will have 2. You might build one way and one another, but they also fulfill some other interesting roles because Dauntless lets them go after slightly higher strength players, and so far I've introduced the team. We've got 1 strength 5, we've got 2 strength 4s, and then actually everything else on the team is strength 3 apart from a special little bacon sandwich we've got coming up later. So this player gives you a little bit more strength against some of the orcs or the chaos, the nurgles, the really beefy teams. It gives you a little bit more flexibility in terms of how you engage with this. Dauntless, great skill. We've also got Strip Ball, which is sort of thrown in there randomly because it doesn't really synergize with the pass. It certainly doesn't pass. The Dauntless Strip Ball is interesting, but most ball carriers are strength 3, so it's got a little bit of everything. These are pretty much the stars of the show. Movement 7 as well, so they're slightly faster than everything else you've got access to, but they are fragile, AV 8+, no block, no dodge, starting skills. So they're great when you get going, but their core skills are something to build on rather than something that's amazing straight out of the box. Next, we get the Norse Raider Linemen. This is a player which has actually got a little bit of a nega trait in there. So they start with block, which is great. Broadly, a flat stat line, 6, 3, 3, passing 4+, AV 8+. They've got block. They've also got thick skull, so on a 8 on the injury table, they will just get stunned rather than knocked out. So that's actually quite a big buff because 8 is the second joint most common dice roll, 7 of course being the most. So they are a little bit more resilient They're effectively AV 9+ in terms of their overall removal characteristic, so they're all right. But they then have Drunkard. And Drunkard means that whenever they try to rush, it's also already a -1. So everything else goes for it or rushes on a 2+. These bad boys are going to rush on a 3+. This is cumulative, so if any other negatives to rushing are also in effect, then it's worse. So it is possible to get to a 4+ or even a 5+ with these bad boys if the weather conditions and we get moles and all that sort of fun stuff appear under the pitch. Their skill access is basically generals and then everything else they can get at, but it is very expensive. So we're looking to basically build out of this tree here, but we've got an awful lot of other players that can fill up roles, so you won't really be looking to do much. These guys are linemen. They stand on the line, they take a punch. And then the last one we've got here is the Beer Boar. And the Beer Boar is a very interesting little piggy. And we'll first of all look at the stat line. For 20k team value and cost to hire into the roster, movement 5, so slower than average. It's got strength 1, so it's terrible. Agility 3+. It's got no passing characteristic at all, and it's AV 6+. So on a 6+, you will break its armor. Fragile really didn't come close on this little piggy, but it has a couple of upsides, which you would hope. It starts with dodge, so dodging around is great. It's 3+ agility and stunty, so it would normally dodge everywhere on a 3+, but it's also got titchy, which means it ignores all tackle zones when moving around, even if it's dodging into 3 tackle zones, 4 tackle zones, whatever, and it gets +1, so it actually dodges on a 2+ with dodge. So it's quite mobile. So that's your first very useful characteristic. Its second characteristic is Pick Me Up. And Pick Me Up is a brand new mechanism, which if you've not played tabletop or you are new to this edition, it has something that hasn't been seen before on Blood Bowl 3, which is at the start of your activation, any players within 3 squares of this player are stood up for free on a 5+. So you put Beer Purg in the middle, a load of players get knocked over around it, and then if they're within 3 squares at the start of your turn, before they've done anything, they just stand up, which means they can block for free. Like they can block as normal. So that has an interesting mechanism where suddenly you can block things out of the way that your opponent isn't considering. So they're probably not worth putting 2 of on a field, but maybe you do carry 1. And they are quite useful. So more on those later, but Pick Me Up is a brand new skill. So that's all the players introduced to you. We've got the costings down the side there. I didn't cover all the costings, but Norse as a base roster are quite expensive, and then they're balanced by the cheap linemen. Rerolls are 60k, and you would be expecting to pick up the medical staff almost immediately. So now you've seen the players. How do we slot them together, and what do they look like in terms of rosters? So as always, I've got 3 rosters for you. This is the first one. I've included all the big things because big things are fun. So we put the Snow Troll in there. We've got 2 Ulfwereners. We've got 1 Valkyrie, which will be a ball carrier to start with. I've got linemen down to 11. And then we've gone 3 rerolls. You did end up with 20k left over. So I've bought 2 dedicated fans. You could turn that into a pig if you want. But I think Norse are a fragile team. And so while we spent quite heavily on the rerolls here, I've put 2 dedicated fans to help the cash generation, to help you replace any players that you might otherwise lose fairly early on. This is not my favourite roster, but I think it's certainly viable. This is more league starty type thing where you don't mind losing the first couple of games, but you want to try and make sure that the MVPs can land on the big things because you're going to play with the Yeti, right? You've decided you're playing with the Yeti, and this is that. It is fairly reliable with the 3 rerolls and oodles of block, so it should be okay. Its downside, its weakness, its flaw is that it's only got 11 players. So you'd be looking to add players almost immediately, right? Medical staff, more players. That's how I sort of build out from here. Next one is roster number 2. Roster number 2, I've sacrificed out the Snow Troll, but by sacrificing out the Snow Troll at 140k, I think they are, we've been able to really round out the rest of the roster and fix the weakness in that first roster. So we've got 2 Ulfwereners as previous, but I've now got 2 Valkyries, not 1, which helps from a development perspective. We've got something to pass and catch to if we need to. I've got loads of line people, and I've also just stuck a little piggy in there as well for funsies. We've kept it 3 rerolls, but I haven't had any money left over to do a dedicated fan. So again, you could just trade out the pig, get rid of that, pour it into cash generation, and within a couple of games, you'd be paying for your own pigs. So you can do that. You could also drop a line person and turn that into an apothecary. That would also give you a bit of protection on carrying slightly more valuable players. So there's another option for you. But that's not a bad chassis. It's not the one I would run in ladder, or not on a longer term ladder view run, but it is, I think this is pretty strong. I like this. Norse roster, version number 3. And version number 3 is ladder optimized. So team rerolls, I've only gone with 2. And the reason I've got 2 rerolls is because if I click back into the Valkyrie has passing access as primary, which means for 20k I can pick up leader. So I can drop that in there, and that's my pseudo third reroll, and it's cost me 20k, not 60k. So I've saved 40k. I eventually will then put a skill on, so I'm probably, instead of having block and a reroll, which is 80k, I could have leader and block, which is 40k. So I end up saving 40k. Might not sound like much, but it is 2 skills that my opponent doesn't have, or that I have bonus. So I would say that this is your ladder build. I've again dropped the Snow Troll just to give myself a bit more of a rounded roster. We've got the 2 Ulfwereners, we've got the two Berserkers. You could probably play with 1, but because I'm not a fan of Drunkard as a concept, I've got 6 players that don't have it, and then I've got a field 5 that do. 3 go on the line, and then 2 others can be moved around as required. We could drop a Berserker, save a little bit of money, and then very quickly transition either into buying an apothecary immediately, or we could then buy the Snow Troll fairly quickly. It's entirely up to you, and it depends on how you want to develop the team. But just, you can already see from these 3 rosters, Norse are quite a flexible, fun thing to play with. Now we've got the rosters. How would you build the team? And what I'm going to cover in this next section is the early team value in terms of we've picked a roster and then we've gone and leveled it. Here I've put largely 1, maybe 2 skills on players, and I've put the skills on in probably the order that you would actually pick them up inside the game. So the Snow Troll, if we've got a Snow Troll, it's likely to take Mighty Blow first. Your choice really is Mighty Blow at 6-star player points or block at 12. I've just put Mighty Blow on there. It's totally reasonable and totally viable to save to 12-star player points and put block on there first, because it would add you some reliability. The Mighty Blow probably gives you a slight edge in terms of removal, but those are the 2 skills, and whichever one you take now, you take the other one slightly further down the line. The Ulfwereners, they're not the easiest things to level, so it might not be that you even get a skill on both of them, but if you do, it's block. Other skills are available, but the correct skill is block. We'll be looking for the Holy Trinity here. We'll be looking for block, guard, Mighty Blow, and then fun things like tackle, stand firm, dodge, defensive, all those sorts of things would come after. But broadly, block first, build from there. Because the Valkyries would level slightly more quickly than anything else, I've put 2 skills on this. 1 I've turned into the dedicated ball carrier, so we've got sure hands to pick up. Because I'm only playing with 2 rerolls in this particular build, then we've gone sure hands to protect that, to fix that problem. And then because it's got the sure hands, it's likely to score a little bit more, so I gave that one leader. Now, it is still vulnerable, and you still want to put block on there, and possibly then even dodge. But there's your starting skills. We're fixing problems on the roster, so lack of rerolls, lack of ball control. And then the one that's going the opposite direction, the Valkyrie, I've put wrestle on that. Only got 1 Berserker in this particular build, so this would have been a variation of build 3, and I've put Mighty Blow on it. That gives me some hitting power, and then I would then take either tackle or guard, depending on what I needed, and I'd be looking to invest in a second Berserker, I think, fairly quickly. And again, you'd be looking for Mighty Blow, guard, tackle, those sorts of fun skills in there. Linemen, they're probably not going to live very long, so I've only put 2 skills on those. To fix the low team value problem we might have with elves, I've put a tackle player in there. Having a block tackle is pretty nice. It fixes things like skinks as well, and ghouls and all that sort of fun stuff. So don't overlook a tackle lineman straight out the gate. And then the one that we really want, the actual thing we want, is dirty player. So we're looking to be able to do some fouling, and Norse lineman nice and cheap, dirty player. You'd be then looking to expand that into sneaky git. Didn't put a skill on the Beer Boar. If we just click into the Beer Boar, we'll notice that it's only got 1 skill tree, and the entire skill tree is on a secondary. So that means you're paying 40 team value for any skill in this pot. Now, that probably means that if we are leveling them, we're just randoming and seeing what we get. Because there are some interesting skills in here, right? Sprint, sure feet, not terrible at 20k each, if we have to have them. Diving tackle at 20k is interesting. Defensive's terrible, because it's just to get punched out of the way, but it might work if it's surrounded by loads of guard. Leap's terrible. Sneaky Git is probably the best of the bunch, because it's 20k, you'll end up fouling with it, so it's probably Sneaky Git that you want. You could probably have fun with things like diving tackle, sprint, sure feet, and sidestep. Those sorts of ones you play around with. Sidestep's probably the second pick in that pile. So that's your starting point. We've leveled. We've played maybe 5 games or 10 games, something in that sort of region, and your team might look something like this. How do you then develop that? Norse, medium team value. Again, the Snow Troll has now leveled. We've now put block and Mighty Blow on there. If you are lucky that the Snow Troll is just running away with things and is absolutely tearing things up, then guard is probably your third skill. And then there's a very interesting question about what to do next. But I think I'll cover that in the next section. Both Ulfwereners have now leveled, and because Norse are a combat orientated team, I've put guard on there as your next skill. Mighty Blow would probably be the sexy choice, and Mighty Blow would be the fun choice in terms of forcing them to level more. And if you were going to play lots and lots and lots and lots of games, I think I'd probably skip guard and have a drop in power output now to level them, to give them Mighty Blow, and then get them guard next. But the maintaining of the power curve in terms of effectiveness, they need guard. This team absolutely does need some guard in it. And the other thing you could also do is you could just drop the Yeti. 200k, you'd be playing off 1250, not 1450. And that 1250 with this type of team, you'd be pretty powerful. So you could say medium team value, the Snow Troll with these skills, or you start playing no Snow Troll and you start trying to play around with the inducements. Next, Valkyries. So we've gone wrestle. I've then gone wrestle tackle. So I've now got a tackle wrestle strip menace running around, which means that if you can get anywhere near a ball carrier, you'll just sack it. You'll just, 2 dice uphill's fine. It's just an absolute menace. So that's one route of building a Valkyrie. I have carried on that route in the next iteration, but I want to just click into this player now and just show you what else you could do with this player, because I think there are 3 routes that you can take this. Route number 1 is ball carrier, ball picker upper, and carrierer with many R's, and that is block, sure hands, leader, that sort of core combat orientation. And then there is the ball sacker, which is what I've shown you here, but there is also a one-turning threat. So you could, characteristic here, movement, that turns this into movement 9, and with a movement 9 piece, with the amount of frenzy that you've got smattered throughout the team, it is entirely a reasonable proposition that you won't need to spend your blitz pushing this person forward 2 squares, and she'll be able to blitz forwards. In which case, a core skill would then be sidestep and dodge and probably block, so that you're looking to punch through the back line on a 1 dice and then score. Where I think you could also take this player. Now that's a much longer term project. It's not probably something you'd play in 10 games. It's probably something you try and build over 20 to 40 games. It's that sort of horizon. It would take a long time to do, because the amount of star player points you need for the characteristics just makes this slightly prohibitive, certainly on tabletop. But online, it is a possibility. So don't rule that out. I've just put that in here because that was what was obvious, but there's another option for you. The 2 Berserkers, we've got Mighty Blow first to try and force levels, and then they want guard and they want tackle. The 2 skills that you would get if they got a 3rd skill would be the one that they don't have here. So this one would get tackle, this one would get mighty guard. The linemen, I've absolutely avoided leveling them. If they level, fine, but ultimately, dirty player is the skill that you're actually after. Tackle, we've now moved into the actual core amount of the team, so if the tackled lineman dies, don't care. And we don't level these to try and keep the team value down. Norse are a flimsy, fragile team who do not really want to go and play at the big boy tables where everyone's got guard, mighty blow, and they just smash you off the field. So do try and play at a lower team value if possible. I put 2 piggies on here mostly for the funsies. Whether you actually need to run 2 at this point is determined whether or not you're going to go for the 1 turn, because they're very good at filling in squares because they've got Titchy. So the Norse 1 turn, although we haven't seen it on Blood Bowl 3 yet, on paper could be very powerful with some leveling. So that all said, let's go and build a completely bonkers team and see what that looks like. So here's an insane team. It's at 2150. If you've got a team at 2150, please screenshot it, put it in my Discord. And it has to be real. You can't have just come and custom team edited it like this, because I don't believe you got it there. It'll just die. This just won't exist. But if it does, Snow Troll, we've gone stuck stand firm on it. Pro is also completely viable at this point as another skill, but that would just make this thing cost so much money. It would be insane. Stand firm is a really fun skill, certainly at the higher team values. And you could also put defensive on this as well, actually, if you want to go in complete insanity. I've got one which has got defensive, one which has got dodge. Ultimately, you'd put both on both. But again, that would make these players cost an absolute fortune. But you know, you could. They do get a lot of value out of secondaries. So Blodge, Strength 4, Stand Firm is annoying. It's then got Guard, it's got defensive, and it also punches pretty hard, and it's got Frenzy. I mean, they'd be vile. Absolutely horrible to deal with. But they'd cost a fortune. The 2 Valkyries, I did finish these off, so I went the ball sack route with a slight nod to being able to 1 turn with the stand firm, sorry, the sidestep and the dodge. And then I fleshed out the ball carrier, sidestep, dodge for defensive and positioning skills. We've got on the ball to go and fetch it, and I've got leader block and sure hands in there as well. So that player is your all-encompassing ball carrier, and it's pretty good. Stats are available, and I just haven't put them in this particular build. The Berserkers, we finished them off, and then I put 1 with defensive and 1 with dodge. You could absolutely be going and either randoming for dodge and defensive straight out the gate, or you could be just picking them up. They take a long time to find, but once you've got dodge or defensive, they really do add an awful lot to those Berserkers. So you could make these players a lot cheaper, right? These are secondary skills which you could try and find at half cost. These are secondary skills at half cost. They could definitely do those. From a lineman perspective, I think once you stop needing to have tackle, the skill that you actually start building into is fend. Because you're becoming a control team with the stand firm, the dodge, the sidestep, the defensive, all that sort of fun stuff. And then the fend becomes like your nobility, but good. Actually good, right? Norse, better nobility. That's how I would sort of frame them. That's where you get the fend. We've got the sneaky yet and dirty player. That player is the one lineman you do not stick on the line, and he's absolutely sort of core. And at higher team values, he is where you're hopefully picking up bribes, something that you'll be using. If we are in any way building beer pigs with skills, I've put sneaky yet diving tackle. I think sidestep's also totally viable on there. So I'm not looking to level them. It's just if I have to, and I did cover that a moment ago, they're the skills that I might put on there. That takes you all the way through trying to find a roster and taking you all the way through developing one. But what I've not covered is something you will be hitting when you first click a team. And I just wanted to show you this sort of in real time, really. So when you first build a Norse team, you'll be presented with this screen, which is a screen you won't have seen before in any other team build. So Norse have to choose an alignment where they have to pick. Are they Chaos Undivided, Flavoured of Corn, Favoured of Corn even, or Old World Classic? And when you're first on this screen, depending on how Cyanide is going to choose to show this, it doesn't actually do anything different, right? So it might look like it's completely irrelevant. It is not. It is all about the star player access that you actually have and what you can do with the star players. So I think that it is important that you have a look at what we can do here. Now, I could show you this inside the game, but I'm going to show you this with a graphic that I've just put together because I think that this might be a slightly easier way of looking at it. So the star players that are inside Blood Bowl 3 are above the dotted line, and Chaos Undivided and Khorne have no difference. Doesn't matter which one you pick. There are these star players available: Morgenthau, Helmut Wolf, Hackflem, Creek, Lord Borak, Withergrasp, and Gobbler Grimlich. If you pick Old World Classic, you will get a different set of star players. You'll still have access to Morg, and you'll still have access to the Chainsaw, Helmut Wolf, but then you'll get these green ones here. Griff, Grim, Grumbidal, Cindy Pie Whistle, Carla, Mighty Zug, and Puggy Bacon Breath. So note the difference. It's either Chaos Undivided or Khorne, or Old World Classic. Now, depending on if and when we get the Khorne team, we might start seeing some additional star players. So Skylar Anglefrim down here, for example, it starts having a bit more impact when they start releasing more star players, because Khorne actually has a slight edge. There's 2 star players that are in Khorne that just aren't in Chaos Undivided. So I would recommend that you under no circumstances choose to be Chaos Undivided, unless it's for fluff reasons. You either pick in Khorne or Old World Classic, and you're thinking about the star players that might come along or actually are in this box here. So there's something for you. I hope that helps. Now, my recommendation would be that I would probably choose Old World Classic in terms of the star player access that you've got, because you've got access to a bomber. Grumbridal really kind of helps because of his special ability to hand out some skills. Griff is amazing. Carla Von Kill's pretty strong. You've got Mighty Zug, which is pretty useful. You get Morg anyway. So I think, on balance, Old World Classic has a better roster of stars than Flavoured of Khorne. But in a one-off pinch, being able to access a Gutter Runner, Hackflem, could potentially be a better move. And there is also Lord Borak the Despoiler, who's pretty strong if you want to build around Borak. Or there is a star player that doesn't actually have a model in Blood Bowl in Games Workshop territory, which is Gobbler Grimlich, which is a Slan figurine, which has leaping abilities, and he's also strength 4. So it's not that Flavoured of Khorne are terrible by any means, but I just think that they're slightly more rounded and more balanced Old World Classic. We'll have to see that over the next 3 months and see if I still think that moving forwards. A couple of last things I want to cover off. We've got formations to cover. I'll show you these one now. So formations on offense, I have gone for 2 Valkyries at the back if we have 2. If we only have 1, just plonk it in the middle. Make sure you protect your Ulfwereners, and then I've put strength 3 things along the line. If your opponent sets up in such a way that you have to deploy the Ulfwereners on the line to get the hits, fine, but bear in mind that the Ulfwereners can get into bother straight away, so you probably want to deploy those slightly later. So offense is all about what did your opponent do, so there's just a template. Start with that and then react accordingly. On defense, this is a defensive setup with against no frenzy, so we've got the Berserker and a Lineman tucked in. And then on the out wings, I've put the strength 4 piece because they're harder to break through for some teams. We're also defending the 2 Valkyries here. So we've got line people as white, and then the strength 4 flanks, and then the Valkyries who are going to hold the middle. If you're doing a 2 or 3 turn defense, just take that entire second and third line, drop them back maybe 2 or 3 squares, so that the opponent has to play in front of you and you can react accordingly. If this is a turn 1, then this is totally valid. If you're playing into frenzy, then you could just play with this default setup here. I think actually that's not quite right. There we go. So we've got the 2 strength 4 things anchoring the wings again, and I've got line people. I have had to deploy the Berserker here in this particular manner. I'm not a fan of this, but chevrons are always fine, right? And if you need to chevron, then this will work. Where you deploy that Berserker and how you deploy it is fine. You could sort of do that, which would protect the Berserker in some manner, or you can try and bring the Berserker in, or you can just have some flat lines. There's a lot you can play around with Norse. Broadly, the consideration is, you know they're going to hit your linemen, and you're trying to offer number 5 and 6 as the player that they actually want to blitz. So how do you do that? You could even go with a slightly asymmetrical setup, right? You could have something like this, as long as there's no frenzy, of course. Then this is okay, and they're probably going to just step some people in here and blitz number 5 or blitz number 6. So they're the things that you could be looking at. Next one I want to cover is customization. As you can see in the top right hand corner, we've got a little electrified me with a little Norse figurine, and it's raining because it's Norse, so why not? But the Cyanide people have gone and done quite a lot of customization stuff recently. I was quite well known for not liking it at the start. Some of them is quite good, some of it's not, but some of it is quite good. So what I've done here is I've paid for everything you can possibly get with the Warpstone, and for the different teams, I thought I'd show you, so you can see what you might be chasing after. So customization. This is the face mask. Without a face mask, it looks like that. This is my take on what a snow troll might look like. It's got lots of spiky things on the edge. It's got frosty stuff coming off on its arms, and I think it looks pretty good. The next one is the one that I actually think looks the coolest out of the lot, and this is the Ulfwerener. It's got a frosty arm in-game that actually you can really see the frosty arm, and it looks pretty cool. This is part of the Blood Pass reward, so you don't have to pay for this. I think it's about halfway through, so you would be able to, you're going to get one of these for freebies. And then, is it the right arm? Sorry, it's the right arm, yeah. And there are two types of head that you can get. So you can have one that looks like a wolf and one that doesn't. And then there is also icy spikes, or you can have a wolf shoulder. So there's a couple of choices that you can have there. This is just the icy spikes because it sort of stands out. Sorry, they're the same on both sides. Now we've got Mr. Peaked, who is our Berserker. I've gone and put the Lupine set on this guy, and he looks all right. I think he doesn't look amazing, doesn't look terrible. It just looks like a Berserker. Then we've got the Valkyrie. So we'll have a quick look at this. Come in closer. You could put a little wolf hat on its head. If not, I went for I think this is the fighter version. So I've just gone completely. It's got an axe. It's got, yeah, it's just everything fighter related. There are some other things. Because his arms are crossed, the wing claws element, which is the slightly more expensively stuff, doesn't really stand out quite as much as some of the others. So I chose the fighter start on this, but it looks like one of those runners from Greek mythology. This one is a lineman. It looks a bit overdressed for a lineman because I've put all the epic stuff that you'll get through the Blood Pass. So you will get this for free if you unlock the Blood Pass by going through. And I've put the Champion of Valmar on it. I can show you what it looks like quickly without one. So you can have everything wolf-shaped. What I would recommend, and in-game, is all the different players pick something that's completely different from all the other players, and so that when you're playing it, they'll stand out a little bit better. So if you go down the Champion of Valmar route, then you will have these will really stand out, but that means that you want to make the Berserkers quite drab and boring because they're going to look very similar. The Valkyries will stand out themselves. And then finally, we've got HP sauce or ketchup. Let me know in the comment section below which you prefer. But this is a basic piggy. And if you're a football fan, you can give it a scarf. And it can also have a little wolf head. And then we can play around with it. It can have shields and stuff on both sides if you want it to have shields. The feet don't do anything really, so I really wouldn't spend time unlocking the feet. And then on the body, if you want to have the barrel have spiky stuff, and bearing in mind you're going to be looking at it like this most of the time, so the barrel is probably the one that if you were going to upgrade it, that's the one you'd pick. Remember that all shields and other cosmetics have no impact on game, so please do not expect your pig to suddenly get an armor upgrade because of the shield. It is cosmetic only. Right, the last thing that we want to cover actually is going to be the inducements factor, and the inducements are really just going to be built around, and I can do it from this screen, they're going to be built around your reliance on either star players or structure and fouling. So I think Norse are trying to play a removal type game once you get into medium to high team value, because they're going to need to remove some people on the opposition team. Therefore, you might want to run your team as lean as possible. So the medium team value with the snow troll, you might start thinking about getting rid of that. So I would be taking up bribes as a very first sort of pickup. And because hopefully, and I'll just create any other new teams, we can see the star player list. Old World Classic. We've got Cindy here. She can throw bombs for 50k. So this is one of the reasons I think Old World Classic is probably the one that you will be picking up, because that is a very strong star player. And then you've got an awful lot of flex within the sort of the 200 to 250k range. Griff, if you need a literal megastar. Grombrindal, if we mouse over, once per turn, you can hand out free skills. Break Tackle, you're currently dodging on a 3+. That would make that player dodge on a 2+. Dauntless, if you need it, probably don't, but it is available. Or Mighty Blow. And he also has block, Mighty Blow, stand firm. So if you can make good use of Grombrindal, you can get a lot done with him. Collar Von Kill, pretty solid star player. Blodge, strength 4, not bad. Buggy Bacon Breath, not going to be something I think you're going to be using. Mighty Zug, a sort of replacement, just as reliable Snow Troll type Snow Troll. Strength 5, block, Mighty Blow with Crushing Blow. So once per game, you can add an extra +1 onto the armor value to help you break. So it's all right. He's a bit expensive, but I think at 150k it'd also be a bit undercosted. So I don't think you'll be picking Mighty Zug too often. Helmet Wolf's terrible. It's Chainsaw that's terrible. Don't pick Chainsaws. They're terrible. And then we've got Morgenthorg. So if you are building in a really cheap manner, then Morg might come to your rescue and start dishing out an awful lot of damage. So, that all said, that's my Norse guide. I really hope you enjoy it. Please come and say hello on Twitch. It'd be wonderful to see you. And please leave some comments in the section below. So, thank you very much indeed for watching, and I will see you all soon.